right, here we go. The Canada Update, 115 and 145, Monday through Friday. All right, they're back. Let's do this.
Remember that time
Hold on.
when I found the world was mine.
We're going to be talking about the Boogaloo today.
And this ain't doom, which we call the Boogaloo Blues. The crowd burst out with cheers. They said, yeah, this is weird. All except that one girl who cried and man, it was out of this world. And I said, baby, why do you feel so blue? Don't you like my blues? She said,
Hey, Denise.
and I said, what?
Hold on.
Baby, but what to me?
All right, guys. Welcome to the Big Canada Midday Mix, 115 and 145, Monday through Friday. Music to make you smile, news about the school, and today we're going to talk about the Boogaloo genre.
I don't know what to do. And I it goes on. And your love got me so upset.
You're listening to Donny Colon Boogaloo Blues.
Honey, my dear, for dynamic. You're so divine. I wish you were mine. And I said, oh baby, all you got to do is love me that you. Honey, mine. Come on, honey.
Yeah, Boogaloo, baby.
Got to feel free. Baby, and you feel like dancing. I mean, you got to be. I'm giving it to you. I'll take you out. I'll show you the
A lot of people don't know about the genre Boogaloo,
time.
so we're going to be talking about that today, guys.
Diamond rings.
We may not have a dance studio, but I still want to teach.
House.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my love. But just feel free.
Where does the Boogaloo start? In the late 1950s, early 1960s, the mambo itself was coming to kind of phasing out, especially with the closing of the home of the mambo, the Palladium, back in 1966, and a new genre was coming up. A genre that mixed the Latin sounds, Afro-Cuban Latin sounds like mambo, like cha-cha, like son montuno, guaguancó, together with rhythm and blues. And the other genre that was very strong at that time, which was the doo-wop. The combination of these Afro-Cuban sounds together with R&B and doo-wop at the time gave birth to a new genre called the Boogaloo. Blue!
Hey, baby.
Boogaloo today! Yeah!
Subway downtown one day just to find me some Chinese food. And as I sat down and looked up, what did I see? There was this little girl short.
Again, guys, we're talking about Boogaloo.
Mister, won't you get up and let me sit down? Can't you see I've been
Mr. Joey Batan right now with the Subway Joe.
my back is aching and my feet are beat, and I'm afraid I'm
guys? Welcome to the Pia Canela Midday Mix, 115 and 145, Monday through Friday. Today we're talking about the Boogaloo, the genre that lasted from the late 1950s to the late 1960s, but took over the world for a decade. Yes, it was born in New York.
I started counting the bruises she made on my back, and as I reached down to pick up my hat from the floor, I started looking at my brand new suit she had on. I said, "Mister, won't you get up and let me sit down? Can't you see I'm tired of fooling around? My back is aching and my back feels cracked, and I'm afraid I'm gonna have to take my seat back." She said, "Listen, little boy, you sure."
So once again, guys, we've been talking about the Boogaloo, a sound that started in the late 1950s as mambo was kind of phasing out. What sealed the deal for the mambo was the closing of the Palladium, which was the home of the mambo in the 1930s through the 1950s. And then, of course, here in New York City, what ended up happening was that the Latino population, predominantly in what is now called Spanish Harlem, lived next door. Their neighbors were all this African American community that was doing amazing with the R&B, the soul music, with the doo-wop at that era. So what ended up happening was that these communities started coming together. The Latino community wanted to appeal to the African American community, and of course the African American musicians wanted to appeal to the Latin community when they wanted to cross over to basically have more sales. So they started mixing and fusing together their music, and that gave birth to what's known as the Boogaloo. The biggest artist in the Boogaloo, the biggest hit, I should say, comes from Joe Cuba and his hit Bang Bang. We can have a show just on Joe Cuba alone. Joe Cuba, amazing musician, mambo, cha-cha-cha, guaguancó, and other genres. But then again, he started mixing music like R&B and soul together to have this hit called Bang Bang, which gave birth to the more popularity of the Boogaloo genre. Yeah. Midday Mix. Today we're talking about the Boogaloo a little bit. That genre that took over the world in the late 1950s to the late 1960s. So far, we've talked about how the mambo was phasing out in the 1950s, and the nail in the coffin for the mambo was eventually the closing of the Palladium, the home of the mambo. And then the young generation, the young artists, they were looking for something new, some new sound, and they decided to start merging, fusing together a lot of the R&B music, the doo-wop music, the soul music that was so popular at the time, together with the Afro-Cuban music that was also as popular. That giving birth to the Boogaloo. Biggest hit so far was Bang Bang by Joe Cuba, but that's not the only artist. There was Joe Cuba, there was Joey Batan, there was Johnny Colon. And then as it gained popularity, even other artists that were not considered Boogaloo artists started joining in. So you had people like Eddie Palmieri, Willie Colon, the Latin Souls, Bobby Valentine, all of these artists jumping on board on the Boogaloo bandwagon. But Johnny Colon, man, that was his genre. Multiple albums in the Boogaloo.
Yo quiero bailar con estilo cha-cha-cha. Yo quiero bailar con estilo cha-cha-cha. Mira, baby, cómo sube y cómo baja. Que yo quiero bailar con estilo de...
Again, this is Bianca de la Midday Mix. We're talking about the Boogaloo genre.
Yo quiero bailar con estilo cha-cha-cha.
One of its biggest artists, Joey Colon.
Sigue, que ya se va a botar. Yo quiero bailar con estilo cha-cha-cha. Yo quiero bailar con estilo cha-cha-cha.
Don't forget about all the premium classes that we're having this week, guys. And of course, on Saturday, let's bring on Bianca to talk about her Saturday classes. And she's also teaching tonight, starting at 5 o'clock. There she is. Hey, Bianca, go ahead and tell us a little bit about your classes tonight.
Hey guys, I'm working from the park again today. Just tuning in real quick to invite you to my class today, 5 o'clock from 5 to 5:45. It's going to be a salsa class for women, salsa lady styling. We're only going to be doing, oh look again. We're going to be doing just 5 bars for our combination. It's going to be super short and sweet. Wear your heels because we're going to be doing a little bit of spinning, and just dress comfortably, and I'll see you tonight. Click the link in our bio to register.
Once again, guys, don't forget 5 o'clock is when the classes start today. Lady styling, salsa styling with Bianca Soto tonight at 5. Let's continue with our Boogaloo session today. We're talking about the Boogaloo and its origin. Yeah, baby. So what makes a song a Boogaloo? Again, guys, don't forget that Boogaloo came about in the late 1950s. It was all the rage in the 60s. It was a combination between Afro-Cuban rhythms and African-American rhythms like the soul, the doo-wop, R&B that was tremendously popular at the time. One of the key characteristics was that most of the Boogaloo songs were done in a bilingual way. Either they were all in English or they were English and Spanish. Like Mira Ven Acá from Joey Colon. ¡Huepa! ¡Boogaloo!
Mulata que bota candela, ven y bótala. Ven y baila Boogaloo, Boogaloo cha-cha. Mulata que bota candela, como la bota la estrella. Boogaloo, cuando le toca el colón nada más. Mulata que bota candela, todo el mundo lo baila. Ven y baila Boogaloo, lo gozan ya. Mulata que bota candela, en Puerto Rico lo bailan, en Nueva York lo gozan de verdad. Boogaloo cha-cha.
¡Huepa! Llega de la Midday Mix. Monday through Friday from 1:15 to 1:45, guys. We're giving you music to make you smile. We're giving you news out of school. And today we're talking about the Boogaloo genre. Now, after the Boogaloo came to be, a lot of the artists started jumping on board and recording Boogaloos with the same format in English, with that same R&B / Afro-Cuban music in it. Eddie Palmieri was one of those artists, and he recorded a track called Ay Que Rico. It sounded like this.
Palmieri, Boogaloo. Arriba con él.
Yeah.
Tasty. ¡Qué rico!
From Eddie Palmieri. That's it. Today we're talking about the Boogaloo genre, guys, but I want to remind you, premium classes continue tonight. Starting at 5 o'clock, we have Bianca doing a styling class for ladies. Salsa styling class starting at 5 o'clock. Yes. At 6 o'clock, Bachata with Kenji. At 7 o'clock, we have body conditioning with Stephanie. So for those of you that have been couch potatoes all these weeks, great class to get you up and running, back into dance. And tonight, closing off the classes at 8 o'clock, Victoria comes back for her first online class tonight, guys. She's going to be doing a Cuban salsa suelta, so Cuban shines, guys, tonight at 8 o'clock with Victoria. But right now, we're going back to the Boogaloo. Great question, Wade. Wade says, what makes the sound of Boogaloo different from mambo and cha-cha? Well, the difference is very negligible because what happens is that it's still mambo, cha-cha, and other Afro-Cuban rhythms like guaguancó and guajira and son montuno especially. But what ends up happening is it has also the R&B soul flavor. So if you fuse them together, if you take doo-wop, R&B soul, and you combine it with mambo, cha-cha, guaguancó, guaracha, son montuno, you get Boogaloo. And it's in English. Yeah. Manny, we're talking about Boogaloo today, guys. A genre of music that lasted from the late 1950s to the late 1960s, took over the world. Yeah. A combination of African-American music like soul, R&B, and doo-wop, and the Afro-Cuban sounds like mambo, son montuno, guaguancó, guajira, and cha-cha-cha. Another artist that tried doing a Boogaloo was Tito Puente. He had a hit called Hit the Bongo. Yeah, baby. You're listening to the sounds of Boogaloo right now, Tito Puente, with the song Hit the Bongo. So why did these two sounds come together? Why did all the Afro-Cuban artists started working with the African-American artists and vice versa? Well, it's all economics. Everybody wanted to make a little more money. So if you can appeal, if the Latinos who were kind of phasing out the mambo was starting to get old a little bit, and they still wanted to make money, the only way to do that was to go ahead and find a new sound, right? And what better way to do that than with mixing and fusing together their sounds with the neighbors. And the neighbors here in the New York Latino community was Harlem. Yes? So you take Spanish Harlem with all of their Afro-Cuban sounds and you fuse it together with Harlem, where you have R&B, soul, and you have doo-wop at the time, and put them together and you go ahead and you get Boogaloo all of a sudden. And it just took over the world, guys. Every major artist at the time wanted a piece of the Boogaloo. They wanted a piece of the Boogaloo so much that they started hating on the Boogaloo artists. You know, Tito Puente, Charlie Palmieri, Eddie Palmieri, all the big mambo artists were a little afraid of the Boogaloo artists coming out because they were the next generation. They were a generation that spoke English well, and they were a generation that started mixing everything, right? So much that many people say the reason why the Boogaloo never really exploded more than just a decade was because the old artists put the kibosh on it. In other words, they prevented them from growing. They didn't want the new young generation to get away from, you know, to get away with all the economics, all the financials. They wanted to continue being and generating income. But at least for 10 years, we had the Boogaloo. Artists like Johnny Colon, Joey Cuba, Joey Batan, the Three Joes. Amazing. Let's get back to Johnny Colon. Let me give you a Boogaloo. Yeah. It's more like it. Try that one. Here we go. Oh, pero bueno. I lost my track here. Listen to this one. Yeah, here we go. Qué rico. Son montuno.
Ha llegado otra vez.
Hey. Son montuno.
Ha llegado otra vez. Yo traigo mi son montuno, sabroso para bailar. Yo traigo mi son montuno, sabroso
You're watching the Pia Canela Midday Mix, guys. 115 and 145. A little bit of music to make you smile.
Y si tú no lo vacilas, atráyate.
News about the school. And today we're talking about the Boogaloo.
Ha llegado otra vez.
Yeah, baby.
Ha llegado otra vez. Y como la vida es buena, muy buena para disfrutar. Y como la vida es buena, muy buena para disfrutar. Por eso yo te lo canto.
You're listening to the sounds of Johnny Colon, Son Montuno, during the Boogaloo era. Once again, guys, today we're talking about the Boogaloo era, the genre of music that took over the world from the late 1950s to the late 1960s.
Ha llegado otra vez. Ha llegado el son montuno.
Ha llegado otra vez.
Como el mío no hay ninguno. Ha llegado otra vez. lo traigo ya en mi memoria. Lo canto ya con
Everybody knows that salsa, as we know it today, originated in New York City, right? But it's not the first Nuyorican music, The first Nuyorican music was the Boogaloo, the next generation of Latinos that were trying to find a new sound. And they decided to merge their Afro-Cuban music together with, R&B, soul, and doo-wop, which was doing amazing at the time. Johnny Colon, Joe Cuba, Joey Batan, Eddie Palmieri, Tito Puente, all artists that started creating more and more music in this genre as it gained more and more popularity. But it only lasted about a decade, mostly because the old artists, the old mambo artists, didn't want to let the new artists get away with all the money, bottom line. You have artists like Hector Rivera gain popularity with this song called At the Party.
Everybody like to see you at the party. Get your shoes on, don't be tardy. Things will be jumping at the party. Everybody like to see you at the party. Get your shoes on, don't be tardy. Things will be jumping at the party.
Now, if you speak to some of the mambo artists, you might find out that, not only was the closing of the Palladium, the home of the mambo, back in 1966, a reason why, mambo went downhill, but also, they might say that the Boogaloo, came in so strong that, they weren't getting gigs unless they themselves were starting to play Boogaloo. But if you speak to the people, you might find a different story. Because the people at the time, again, they were looking for something new. The mambo had been king for a long time. And when they heard this sound from the next generation of Latino musicians, they couldn't get enough of it. It became the next craze, the Boogaloo. So if you speak to the people, you might find that they were grateful for the Boogaloo because it allowed, the next generation of Latinos that maybe didn't speak Spanish to now relate to the music, to now go back to the Latin sound. If all the kids are listening to doo-wop, soul, R&B in the hood, and all of a sudden you have something that brings them back to the Latino music, the older generation is going to love the fact that their kids are now listening to something that's based on Afro-Cuban sounds and based on Latin music. And that was the Boogaloo. Yeah, baby. You're gonna get a midday mix, 115 to 145, guys, Monday through Friday. A little bit of music to make you smile, news about the school. And today we're talking about the Boogaloo genre. Yeah. I gotta bring on Pete Rodriguez. He had one of the biggest hits of the Boogaloo era.
Now let's get this straight.
Some would say one that kicked it off.
Baby, I made it straight. Because I gave it the Latin beat. You know, child, I'm kinda hard to beat. Just commence your feet to skate. Take up your arms and make it shake.
Yeah, baby.
If you think you're shy, do me a favor, honey, go someplace and hide. I like it like that. You gotta believe me when I tell you.
I like it like that.
I'm Boogaloo, I
I like it like that.
like it like that.
I like
This song is still a hit today, redone and overdone. You had people like Tito Nieves redo it, La India redo it, Jennifer Lopez redo it, Cardi B do it. So one of the last facts I'm going to give you is that the Boogaloo, yes, a lot of the next generation after the Mambo era, we're very thankful for the Boogaloo because they founded a link to bring back a lot of the next generation Latinos back to Latin music. Some credit it with actually going ahead and being the catalyst for what we know as salsa today, because if the new generation wouldn't have come back to Latin music, the next New Rican sound, which is salsa, wouldn't have, grabbed hold of the next generation and been as popular as it is today. Boogaloo, baby. It made it all happen. I like it when the next generation today is talking about how Cardi B has a hit called I Like It Like That. They don't know it started back in the 1950s. But the smart ones find out that it's been a redone song, and they go back and they listen, and guess what? They find out who Pete Rodriguez was, who Joe Cuba was, who Joey Batan was, who Johnny Colon was, who Hector Rivera was, who Eddie Palmieri was. So Boogaloo, in one way, still bringing it back, still making it happen, bringing people back to Latin music.
Listen to me, don't be shy, join the party, say like I say, like this, see, you ready now? Yeah! Okay, I like it, I like it, I like it like that, I like it.
All right, guys, let me give you an update before we finish up, and I'll give you the last facts on the Boogaloo. Don't forget, premium classes continue tonight, guys, at 5 o'clock. Bianca, ladies styling class. At 6 o'clock. Kenji with bachata. At 7 o'clock, body conditioning for dancers with Stephanie. What a great way to get off your couch, guys. And at 8 o'clock, we finish the night with a new online person, Victoria, doing a Cuban salsa suelta. Cuban shines tonight at 8 o'clock, guys. Come and check it all out. Plus, all the other premium classes happening this week and the next. Don't forget, tomorrow's the last day to get it all for free. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and end it today, guys, with the song I started with. One of my favorite Boogaloo songs by Johnny Colon, Boogaloo Blues. Time I hear the song, I just want a glass of rum. Sit in the backyard and plan out the rest of my life. So the last fact, guys, I'm going to give you about the Boogaloo is, if you enjoyed everything I talked about today, go ahead and check out an amazing documentary that was done about 5 years ago. It's called We Like It Like That. A documentary about the Boogaloo era. Don't just dance to music. Know your music, guys. We're right here. Epa, there it is. We're gonna have a drink right now. Wepa. Sing it, Johnny.
I could remember the time when I felt the world was mine, and as I sang this same tune, who cried and cried and made it.
I like the idea, Bianca. Go ahead, organize it. Let's do it.
Why do you feel so blue?
To all the people that remember the Boogaloo, to all the artists, to the generation that danced it, to the music that still exists today, guys. Here's one for you. Salud.
But what to me? Oh, you got something to me. She said,
The dance studio's closed. I still want to teach. I'll see you tomorrow, guys, at 1:15.
and